Guys, if you're not going to, just be a bit louder, I'm just going to ask all of you just to go back and try to get some coffee from Ed's now. So let's try to find a balance here. So welcome everybody to WOLF Summit. And at the same time, I would like to welcome our speakers. In the beginning of that, I also would like to say that let's just say, I'm very impressed. I'm with WOLF Summit for a very long time. And I would say this is one of the best stages and the setup that I see. And one thing I have to tell you guys is most of us just came from somewhere to Wrocław and we are ready. But there are lots of, let's just call them a staff and organizers that they really work for the past few days just to make all of these things. So because we are also the first part to start, so if you don't mind, let's just have a round of applause for the organizers before we do something here, please. Good. I have to do something to see a bit more energy here. And at the same time, I don't want to make too much of the time from our very good speakers. We're going to talk about something that is going to be very much relatable to everybody, aside if you guys don't live in a city and you live, I don't know where else you can live. We're going to talk about two things. First of all, what is a smart city and exactly all the aspects of the life of a smart city for your everyday life. But in order to do that, first we have to know our speakers a bit better. So if you don't mind, Evangelos, I'm going to start from your side and then introduce yourself. And then after that, we will start the conversation. You have a... No?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Evangelos Mitsakis. I am the CEO of Deep Traffic. It's a recently established spin-off company of the National Center for Research and Technology in Greece. And even more recently, about 2 months ago, we also started a branch, so a parent company here in Wrocław, and we're very excited for that. What we do is that we work in the traffic management sector, and we are providing a technology for road traffic management, focusing on connected and automated vehicles.
Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Heinecke. I'm the founder and CEO of Breeze Technologies. We are a German deep tech company working in air quality. So we work with cities and other entities to monitor, manage, and improve air quality. We do that nowadays in 11 countries, everywhere from the US to here in Europe to Japan. Besides doing that, I'm also an advisor to the French NGO Urban AI, where we think about AI applications in the urban interface, and a EU climate champion.
Yeah, good morning, guys. My name is Alexander Romanishin. I am partner of ISE Corporate Accelerator and VC firm. It's a leading Ukrainian accelerator which works with scale-up startups and help to find corporate partners and government partners as well. And we help them to raise new fund and to scale up, actually. And from other side, I'm also represent government side because, as many of you know, the turbulent situation in Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. And as I'm former Deputy Minister of Economy, I help a lot to rebuild Ukraine right now. And cities are our target, and we have many things to do right now to rebuild and recover. And I will tell more about and share my view on that, and we'll be happy to hear the expert opinion as well, how we can create great, smart, and wise city in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Talking with speakers that are so experts and knowing what they do, I usually will say it's a walk in the park, but this one is going to be a smart park. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of dad jokes also in the middle, so just embrace yourself. We have a lot of jargon, especially, Robert, you mentioned about the AI. It's one of those words that I'm really worried to even mention it. Like, I studied AI, and like when people say, like, this is a very smart, like, light. And I was like, what does it do? And it was like, it only changes every 30 seconds. And I was like, wow, that's very smart. So let's just try to first have a proper understanding of what smart cities really are, in your opinion, because I think it's pretty much opinionated. Everybody have a different understanding of that. And then we can try to basically be a little bit more deeper into the topic. So again, from the beginning.
What are smart cities?
Yeah, what is your definition? What makes a city a smart city?
I think it's threefold. First one, it's the obvious one, obvious at least for some of us, the technologies. This needs to exist and be in place and be utilized effectively. The second aspect, in my mind, for smart cities is the administration. So the city as an authority, which needs to be able to understand, to adapt, to procure and to utilize those technologies effectively. And the last one, and I think it's the most important one, are the people. They need to be able to use and to find useful those services and whatever the smart city services might include. There is a wide range of such services and technologies, but people need to really easily understand that something is improving. Otherwise, it's really not smart, or it is smart for the professionals like us, but it needs also to be useful for the people.
So what I hear is that a lot of people factor, right? So administration, people, and then the second is that a smart city always still have to be in the path of improvement. Okay, that's very refreshing. Robert?
You know, as you already said, there are so many different definitions for smart cities out there. But the kind of synopsis, what I found in my conversations with municipal officials, but also with NGOs and other civil entities, the smart cities that really are smart, also for me personally, are the ones that use processes, that use technologies, and particularly that use data to increase the quality of life for their citizens. And you don't need to deploy every smart city technology that is out there. You actually don't need to deploy any technology at all. For me, a smart city is one that actually looks at what is happening out there compared to designing their new development plans, for instance, in an ivory tower, and actually uses insights and data from the urban environment to make decisions about how to be more sustainable, how to be more efficient, how to be more effective in providing their services to their citizens.
So a bit more on the data side. You know, one funny thing that is happening right now is that I'm not sure if right now we have to talk about EdTech or smart city, because a lot of things that we're talking is about educating people and administrator. And I'm not sure how much of that is going to be touched, but now I'm just going to be another time shocked and try to have your definition.
Yeah, definitely to add something smart to the smart guys after this comment. So I would like just to make a kind of accent on engagement. Yeah, so to be smart, it means that you need to engage all stakeholders which live in your area, in your region, in your city specifically. And through this engagement, to resolve the current challenges and the future challenges. So is your infrastructure, your people, your skills of people can face these challenges, it means that the city is smart. And so you can estimate smart or not based how the people who live in the city resolve the challenges. If they can resolve the challenges and they are happy to live there, it means they're smart. If it's fully AI, electricity, zero carbon emissions, but people not live here and they can't resolve the current or future challenges, so it's not smart enough. It's my view.
So you put it from like a brain drain aspect of that how much of the people that they are supposed to be that they...
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So I'm just going to have a quick recap and then try to see where we have to go, because it helps me a lot. You give me a lot of talking points. Another very funny thing is that imagine like you go to the first grade and then after they come back home and I was like, Mom, I graduated. I was like, what happened? I was like, I started going to school. It's just like we have cities and smart cities. Like there's nothing in middle, you know, it's just like either you're a smart city or you're not a smart city. So guys, is there any ranking? Like, is there like a smart city level 1, a smart city level 2, or like any way that we can try to differentiate these cities from each other?
I think there is. Actually, I think that there are several rankings. I don't know if they're actually in the sense that you practically imply, like the first grade or second grade or the sixth grade, where you graduate at the end. But for sure, there are rankings in terms of absolute numbers by various institutions and universities and organizations worldwide. And in most of those, the same cities appear to be in the highest rank, so they're most probably also consistent in their results. I think they use several indicators for several aspects of smart cities like mobility or energy or waste management, buildings management, and so on and so forth. What I think is important in those rankings and categorizations of cities, at least in my mind, the most or one of the most important things that somebody should consider in order also to be able to assess and to interpret those results of the rankings is the size of the city. Not all cities are the same, but based on my limited experience, what I can say is that smaller-sized cities are very well suited in order to implement those types of solutions which are implied under the smart city umbrella. They're much easier to manage, they're much easier to procure, to implement, and to adapt from the side of the citizens. But to answer your question, yes, there are several rankings, and one can easily find those on the web. There is not just one.
So if I understood correctly, size does matter. Just trying to be scientifically accurate. So.
Sure.
Okay, so Robert.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. You know, in Germany, we just have a couple of handful of cities with more than 100,000 people, but we have 2,000 cities plus with less than that. So obviously, if you're a larger city, if you're a metropolis, you have different problems, and you also differently need to deal with that. And there, technology, new processes, learning from what other municipalities are doing is really going to help you. But of course, also smaller municipalities have their own challenges, and becoming a smart city, being on that journey towards being a smart city can help to deal with that. For me, the kind of pinnacle of being a smart city is achieved when you're actually learning from other cities, how they are dealing with their challenges, and being in a kind of constant exchange of best practices about that. But also on the other side, using whatever means you have, and that can be technology, that can be processes, to kind of try out new things, and also work between the different departments of a city to figure out these challenges that you have. Because that is one big thing that I see in a lot of different cities, that you have these silos in between the different departments. You know, only the traffic department deals with traffic, the environmental department deals with the environment, and so on. And if you have a challenge that kind of affects both or more of them, then that is really where becoming a smart city can help you to tackle that.
So a smart city is a sustainable city. Can we?
And an integrated city, yeah.
An integrated city. I like that. Yes, perfect.
Yeah, just continue this point. So it's really important to achieve the sustainable goals. And if we measure the city just in terms of number of technologies or solutions which they implemented in terms of traffic jams or in terms of security, it's definitely not enough, and it can kind of don't show the correct measurement. So I would prefer to measure is this city achieve the sustainable goals, rather than just to measure have great department which work very well in terms of traffics, for example. Yeah, and in the terms of traffics, it can be on the first place, but in another indicators like safety or pollutions can be opposite. So how we can measure and put this city on the top comparing to others? So yeah, I think that more important that to make this balance score, it's more important to measure the level of smart tests.
Okay. I would say even sometimes cities, I wish there was a better name for it, just not all this would be cities. We have Barcelona that was made by Gaudi. For me, this is like a personal pet project. And then you see some South American cities that if you really want to find your way, it's just like turn 4 times in that direction and then maybe left, but a bit towards the right. I'm not sure if, for example, like if you guys know like what 3 words, because it's so hard sometimes to find like Google-style maps, because unless you literally have a name for that GPS location, it's impossible to find. Or then you go to Barcelona and then everything is grid. It's just like you just know exactly where you're going, or even to some extent, some part of New York. So we're talking about infrastructure. We're talking about the fact that we talked about the size of the city, the integration of the city, the infrastructure of the city. But maybe this time I'm going to start from you, Alex. Like, if you talk about infrastructure, because I mean, I live in Warsaw, and they always say that, oh yeah, like these fields are old, and that's why we have a problem. Warsaw was being flat. Like every time I bring people to Warsaw, and I was like, oh, this is new, that's new. Oh, there were like 2 things there. But when they built the city, they built it exactly the way it was. So not every city has this, and I'm sorry, there was so many sadness and bad things that I want to say the luxury of just being able to rebuild it, but I'm only talking about the, let's just say, technological aspect of that they did not do that, and they went after the heritage, and they went after that, they just say, restoring all the memories that people had. I was having a chat with my friend that she was saying that she's happy that she still see her grandmother's house in that side. So I understand the empathy towards that. But if you really would like to see the cities of the future, where do we have to start? Do we have to flatten the city and start at the top? Do we have to build a new city, or we can try to repurpose a normal city to smart city?
Yeah, great question. So we see the many examples. By the way, could you switch on the presentations, and I will show some example later. But before presentation is downloading, between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, there is a city which is just built from the scratch, and they tried to create many things, solar panels, and to make this totally autonomous. But something went wrong, with this, and people don't want to live there. Why? Another side, it's like you mentioned, Matt, about Warsaw, and it's created from the flat, from the zero, and to save heritage. But the main point was to just save heritage, and they didn't think about how to build roads in the best way, and the heritage dominated in this planning. As already mentioned, Ukraine now, many cities of Ukraine destroyed right now, and it's really painful to see what is happening now in these cities. But from another side, we have an opportunity just to build the city from the scratch and to implement the best technologies, taking into account the heritage, but engage more technologies which already tested and shows a good result in the European city, in Germany, in Poland, and other city. So it didn't switch off. So, but the point is that many European cities already started to create the plan what they want to do with Ukrainian cities. And I will tell later, and we wanted to create kind of platform where all technologies which are existing now can be implemented on selected city in Ukraine. Which technology, it's a question, and it's upon the decision of all stakeholders, but it's a time to make this experiment now.
Okay. Make an experiment. I mean, I'm not always happy to hear making experiments. Sometimes these things really go south. But if you don't mind, just to maybe diversify the questions a bit more. And I'm going to ask you maybe a bit more of a controversial question. Do you even think smart cities are good?
Well, I mean, I think that goes. That's a good question. That goes back to the point that I was trying to make earlier. That if you create a city just for it to be smart, if you take, for instance, as you said, a number of technologies implemented as a KPI to whether a city is smart or not, that doesn't work. That's not a good smart city. I think if you want to have a smart city that is actually good and that helps its inhabitants, then you need to be aware to use the means that you have, the technologies, the processes, to tackle the challenges that the residents actually have and to try to improve the quality of life and not just implement technology for technology's sake. And if you do that, then I really believe that using smart city technologies can help us to make our cities more efficient. They can help us to save resources, for instance, by implementing smart streetlights. And here I'm trying to give you a little bit that you can talk about later. Yeah, and thereby like creating better traffic flows, for instance, and thereby also having a positive impact on the environment, and having a positive impact on the commuter times, and so on. And I think examples like this really show that you can have very simple technologies in the end that can have a huge impact on the quality of life of the residents of a city. But you always need to have their needs and their wishes in the forefront of your mind.
Good. Thank you. That was pretty spot on. So then goes a different aspect of that. How much do you think smart city is related to a green city?
They do, but I think it's not a prerequisite because there are green cities already, not necessarily smart, and the other way around. This relates hugely also to some other aspects in the background of urban planning. You cannot very easily modify land uses, at least in Europe. These are legislation. Actually, urban planning rules are legislative rules, so they're not very easy to change and modify those, at least in Europe and in all the established cities as we know those in Europe. Perhaps in other parts of the world, things might be easier, especially for those countries where new cities appear out of nowhere. Now, I think that there is some sort of shift towards what you mean. In Europe, there have been several programs and policies and support in various types and forms for smart cities. This was the exact term, but very recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the European Union announced the 100 climate-neutral cities. Wrocław is part of those, by the way, which is quite important. So I think, at least from the EU policy dimension, the objective will be for the next 10 years or so to reduce carbon emissions significantly. This might imply also some urban regeneration activities in some parts of the city. So yes, greening would also fit in there. But as I said, it's not a prerequisite.
Okay, I'm just going to go back a bit to the audience just to see where we are. How many of you guys think that you live in a smart city? Okay, how many of you guys can raise your hand? I'm just going to have a quick consensus. Okay, so you really don't live in a smart city. We really have to fix that, you know, because I think, how many of you guys think you're in a modern city? You see, that's a massive discrepancy, right? Like, a lot of people feel that they are in a modern city, but a smart city. And also, when we discuss this factor of the human factor, the factor that it has a lot to do about people, and it has a lot to do about administration. Because we, unfortunately, most of the time, we count the number of IoTs that we have in a city, and then we just say if that's a smart city or it's not a city. And another thing, I'm not sure how many of you guys really thought about it, but we don't have a lot of discussions on media and everything about a smart planet. Because I was like, let's just make a smart planet. Everything is about cities, as if like cities are real things because they are just fictitious, but planet is real. Because the reality is the planet is pretty smart. Planet knows by itself how to be sustainable. There is 100% integration because there is one planet. And at the same time, if you really take a look at it, if we're not going to mess it up, it's doing a pretty good job, right? So the only malfunctioning part of that is this, two-legged creatures that they are basically walking all over. So how do we change that? Again, I'm just going to start from your side and then try to go back. Like, how do we have to try to just make people have a better understanding or better feeling that, yes, I live in a smart city?
That's a difficult question.
We didn't say it's going to be an easy panel, so.
What I have in mind is not the smart planet, actually it's the smartphone. And I think what was important is that, at least in that domain, people were able to create a technology that was precognitive. I think this is the important part. And I think this will make the difference at the end, also at the level of smart cities. I'm really scared to talk about a smart planet. I think the key is to create something that knows what you want before you actually want it and solves that. This is what the smartphones did, and I think this is why they became so successful. So I think this is the right direction to think about smart cities, providing to citizens solutions to their problems and to their daily lives, even before that they recognize they have this problem, at a very personal and daily level, I mean.
I could ask you the same question, but because there is a name Breathe in your company, I just want to, if you don't mind, maybe you can focus a bit more on the environmental aspect of that.
Yeah, sure. But I'm actually going to use your smartphone metaphor as a starting point for that, because I think that's really a fantastic example. The smartphone put a lot of power into the hands of people. This is my first time in this city. I arrived yesterday evening at the airport, and I had zero problem at all to get to my hotel, to figure out how to get here in the morning. If I think back 10, 15, 20 years, I would have been screwed probably, right? Or at least I would have paid much more for a taxi driver to take me all around the city before at some point arriving at my hotel. And the what3word example that you gave earlier, this is another one of these enabling technologies that weren't designed by a city or by some sort of smart city consortium, but no, they were designed by somebody that was frustrated with the status quo of trying to find their way. And now we have an additional layer of these what3word addresses to just put on top of our planet, and they're solving challenges globally with that. And now this leads me to this point that I'm trying to make here, with that these smart city technologies can actually help the individual people to overcome challenges, and they can help to empower the individuals in our cities to also work towards having a more sustainable, having a greener, having a cleaner city. One of the earliest findings that we made when we talked with cities about our solutions in air quality was that public officials in some cities, not all of them, were afraid of the air quality data that we were producing. I talked to a lot of mayors that told me, not so officially, hey, if we start to monitor in more places how the air quality looks like, we might find additional challenges. And I told them, yes, you will probably find points that you didn't know about where the pollution levels were too high. But we're also going to tell you how you can deal with those most efficiently. And there are, on the one side, the public officials that are afraid of that and don't want to do that, but they become less and less. And there's more and more in the public service that actually want to resolve these challenges. And This is why we, for instance, we have designed like a citizen portal, for instance, where we share a lot of data with the public, and we try to also tell this, the public officials, hey, if you do that, you actually make yourself look good, because if you show your population, hey, these are the problems, but we are doing this to solve them, then of course the citizens are happier than if you're just trying to somehow maintain a status quo and wait for these what-3-word technologies, for instance, to come around and really put a spotlight on the challenges that you might have.
Good. Again, just to diversify, and then, guys, we can talk till, who wants to stay till the end of the day just to talk about the smart cities? No one? Yes, one person. So it's a very deep topic, because we all live somewhere, and let's just say there are so many things that we have to want to go back and hopefully to a smarter city, especially if that really means smarter people. And we're all tired of, not us, but other people that are stupid and they make everything complicated. And that is one of those things that we really try to solve. Talking about Ukraine, one of the things that we can also try to do is to wait for legislation to be changed, the governments to be better. And I'm not sure how many of you guys want to live for 200-300 years, but I think I'm not going to be that time around. So what do we do with private sector? Do you really think smart cities are just something that governments need to do? Or maybe you can think of the private sector as a way to help what you mentioned with this restructuring the cities and make them smarter?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Could you please again put the presentation? And to be honest, especially in Ukraine, private sector plays the most important role right now. So, and even in the previous life, in normal life, usually when we are talking about the concept how Ukrainian cities are developing, so it's more about ecosystem. It's more about, you know, the component of different stakeholders and different angels which united in one cycle. So it's more about ecosystem, and when people from private sides and people from government sides and community and students and experts join together and to think how to resolve the existing challenges. And usually I believe in open innovation approach. And during my career, I did many open innovation projects with corporates, and even during making this project in corporates, we always make the same problem. People in the department don't want to implement technology because they disrupt something old, something which they don't want to touch, because, as you mentioned, it's bring new problem. It's one point. Another point, the people lose power, and they don't want to lose power and just want to keep the status quo. And how you can implement solution when your stakeholders' position is just to keep status quo? We are talking about corporate sector. But when we are talking about municipalities, government sectors, it's double harder to do, to make this, how to say it, disruptions. Yeah, let's call it this. It's really creative, but disruptions. And I had experiment. I love this word experiment because you can achieve something new only through experiment. And we did it in Lviv city a couple of years ago when we engaged several corporate partners like DTEK, Vodafone, and Cisco, who says, guys, we're ready to pay for solutions, but you, like municipal, should choose what solution are the best for this or that area, for electricity supply, for traffic, for different services which utilities companies provided. So, private sector pay for solutions, government put the challenges, technological providers and technological teams like startups and mature companies bring the solutions, and based on these discussions and this very long process, but finally, after over 60 solutions, we found top 10 the best and integrated in the city. So, and this is an example of how private sector, government sectors, and technological minds and spirits can bring cities to the next level. So, and I believe in this open innovation, it works. And answering on your questions about Ukraine and what happening next, I believe it's now time to open this opportunity to many cities which already implemented solution to share the solution with Ukrainian cities. And I'm pretty sure the private sector will support now. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, of course. I mean, the good news is that you guys have the private number to Elon Musk, so you're not going to have a problem with the private sector.
In Ukraine, definitely now number 2 in the world after Japan in terms of the numbers of satellites from Elon Musk. Yeah.
So, yeah, nice guy to have. If he get out of Twitter, he's going to do a lot of good job. So, also getting out of the Twitter, talking about challenges and innovation. Let's just say that we have definitely smartphone. If any of you guys don't have your phone next to you, there's an emergency room out there. You can just go there and then try to find it, because that's impossible. And then we go back to the number of the people who live in smart homes. How many of you guys live in a smart home? You see, I love that there's one person here that lives in a smart home in a smart city. Where do you live? Poznan. Nice. I was more thinking of somewhere a little bit more in the western side, but I love the city. So that's the point. We really have to try to understand why we are living in a city that is not smart, why we are still living in a home that is not smart. That basically goes back to also what Clinton said about its economy is stupid. Is this really economically makes values for us? Or they just say this is just a luxury that we're trying to add. That's why 90% of people here, they do not live in a smart home, in a smart city, and they're still fine. So Evangelos, you can try to have your points on that.
I wouldn't consider that a luxury. I might be able to say that perhaps the technologies are not solving the actual problem yet, or they're not yet so mature, or perhaps they are. So no, for sure it's not a luxury for a city. I think it is a combination of what has already been mentioned several times also by the other speakers today. A city by itself cannot do that. There is a need for this ecosystemic, open innovation, whatever you want to call it, approach. At the end of the day, it means that the city needs to collaborate with the private sector, with universities, with the academics, with startups, with the citizens themselves, in order to create the necessary framework conditions in order to actually do something meaningful. And this is, what I just said does not cost anything. It's at zero cost. After that, and utilizing all these new procurement approaches that start to appear also in Europe, I think the costs are bearable for cities. Of course, depends on the size of the projects and the size of the underlying problems. But for sure, in my mind, it is not a luxury. It is to start with. I think it is an organizational / procedural issue, and this is why I mentioned that the smart city includes also smart administration at the beginning. Cities somehow need to organize themselves. Perhaps they need to establish new organizations that will manage the smart city part of their city. And this is already happening in several cities. But no, it's not a luxury. It's an organizational and procedural issue for the city at the beginning to understand the underlying problems, to set a clear roadmap, how to achieve the solutions for those problems. And as I said, also utilizing these new innovative funding and collaborative schemes that are allowed, practically meaning public-private partnerships. I think it's not a luxury for sure.
Okay, I'm just going to say something else. Like 2-3 days ago, I had a problem with my internet provider for the first time after a very long time. And we came back home, and also for your information, I do live in a smart home. And I was just like, I can't turn the lights on. And I was like, okay, so I can put a hotspot for my laptop, but it doesn't connect to the TV anymore. So I was just like, you know what? We're just going to find somewhere to work with the oven, and then we're just going to watch something on the laptop and go to sleep because you cannot live there. I think that's also another aspect of not living in a smart city or a smart home, because it becomes a bit more volatile and let's just say more demanding on first internet and then a lot of other aspects that you never had, right? Like you go home, you just, have a match, you just, light up the candle, and then after that your home is ready, Now it's just like the internet speed is not good, why the cable on that side is not connected to the washing machine, and so on and so forth. So maybe I can just try to go back and then try to talk about the damage control. Like how much do you think that, let's just say, smart cities and let's just say all these aspects of that, there are, if I can call it this anti-fragile?
Yeah, it's a great example. I also live in a smart home, but my home I can still open the door even if there's no internet, luckily. But I also have experienced it in the past. There was no internet, and you cannot use the apps anymore to control stuff. You have, of course, your physical buttons still, but yeah. But also talking a bit in my role as an EU climate ambassador here, in the beginning of the year, I switched all the what's it called, the heat valves of my radiators to smart radiators, and at least the app tells me I'm saving 30 to 40% of energy every month now, because they turn off when I go home, they turn on like half an hour before I come home. So they are less on, and they turn off automatically when I leave the city. So that's less complexity now in my mind, having to think about that. And on the other side, I also save money, because if you look at the energy prices, they're really crazy, right? I did a small calculation. In 1 year, these smart radiators have paid off for me already. And we're saving the environment at the same time. But I totally agree with you on the damage control part, and I believe we need to have a serious conversation about, on the one side, how much comfort and how much time might these smart city technologies be saving us, versus on the other side, if they actually fail, and what is the likelihood of them failing, what does that actually mean for us? Will the city break down? Will the city break down for a week? Or is that just rebooting the infrastructure once, and then after 5 minutes of disruptions, we are back to normal? And of course, the more serious the technologies and the areas of where we're using the technologies get, like if we are deploying smart infrastructure, for instance, for your fire brigade or for your ambulances, those need to be way more resilient than these kind of quality of life technologies, like measuring air quality, or nobody will die if we don't measure air quality for 5 minutes and then the system reboots. So I believe we need to have that discussion, but what kind of makes it easier in that sense is that there is already some good examples out there of cities using smart technologies. And I haven't heard of so many cities that went completely dark for a couple of days yet. I believe that will happen in the future. We will have these stories in the news, but probably this will be a learning experience for all of us, what technologies to avoid then. And progress is always also somewhat lined by failure, and from a startup's perspective, you learn from your mistakes every time. So we cannot just completely avoid the smart city topic because we might be afraid of failing there.
I mean, for cities that they can go dark, you can go to North Korea, because that would what call them Tuesday. So Well, I'm just going to, again, tune it a bit into a different direction. So we have LG Home. If anybody is from LG here, we should have a lot of them around. So let's just call it into something a bit more practical. So making a city smart is usually way more complicated. But how about aggregation of a lot of smart homes? Like, how do you see? Because especially you mentioned post-war. I mean, you know, the funny thing is, like, cities are not properly damaged. Like, most of the time, homes are going to be damaged, right? So, and then after that, let's just say that people have to come back to those homes to be able to pay taxes, to be able to go through the rest of it. So how do you see the role of the smart homes? And especially, again, what we discussed, like, I'm a big fan of the private sector, that if the money basically come from private sector, then the public sector would follow. So how do you really see the role of the smart homes in both, let's just say, the progress of a smart city, and at the same time in the overall quality of life of people?
Yeah, I think the quality of life, it's not equal to the smart city and to smart homes totally, but sometimes it makes the life simple, more simple definitely. And but again, if it's too smart sometimes, and if something broken, you don't have enough skills to live during the short or long period of time without the skills which needed to live without smart city. So, is it make the people happy or not? I'm not sure that this will make people happy. And 7 years ago, I made a journey to the jungle and living in near the river without electricity, without Wi-Fi, without anything. And I can say you that it was the most remarkable and the most happiness time in my life when you just listen the voice of birds in the morning. Not 3D, 4D, 5D acoustics, so just listening these kind of voices of monkeys, of mosquitoes, and this brings to the real life. And maybe I'm conservative, but when you can compare where you prefer to live, in smart house with many scientific and complicated stuff, or in the rural area, but to be close to the nature, but use the civilizations to achieve your personal goals and to find this way of living. I think again we need each people should have opportunity to choose. Do they prefer to live in passive dome with solar plants on the roof and water supply from the air and etc., or maybe just live in normal buildings with electricity, internet connections, and work from home and to serve global clients? So I think there is no right answer. What is best and what is wrong? So it's very important to create opportunity for people to choose the lifestyle and not just create the block boxes, smart block boxes with the smart houses, and that's all. Like an example of the city, I don't remember the name of the city between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. It's like
I'm worried that if I would say it, I'm going to butcher it, but...
Yeah. So the cities, you can create the best city, smart houses, but nobody wants to live there. Or in the jungles without anything, and people are happy.
Yeah, I mean, if I say I learned something from the panel, if somebody would ask me how smart can the cities get, I will say as smart as its own people. Maybe I will say that might be a good, let's just say, wrap up the whole thing. But if you guys know what is happening right now in the Silicon Valley, and let's just say people that they are way more tech savvy than us, is that they are basically just having a bunch of chickens in the backyard, and they're also super happy that their house is totally Wi-Fi free. And all of a sudden you see some other places that they're using technologies that they are producing. They're just saying that how can we just get more Wi-Fi back in and also try to have less of a backyard because we just want to basically use it for electric vehicles and everything else. So I really think one of the main points that we have to fix is to be a bit more, let's just say, environmentally friendly and be a bit more, if I can just don't use anything sophisticated, normal. That's what you're mentioning about being and living, let's just say, in nature and feeling even more comfortable than my smart home and smart city. So let's just say that maybe we can try to be, and it's a tech conference and a tech environment, but a bit more, let's just say, honest with ourselves, maybe be a bit more conscious about the fact that everything starts with us, and then try to have, hopefully, maybe focus on our side and everything, and hopefully everything else would follow. And with that, I just really would like to say thank you. That was a very engaging and very interesting discussion panel. And I would like to ask you guys, in case you have any questions from our speakers, I'm sure you can find them, outside in the conference and try to make sure that this conversation just continue. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.